Hello, hi everyone, and hello to our virtual audience as well. Welcome to Reactor, in person and also virtual audience. Please read our code of conduct. We operate a very strict code of conduct here. Be mindful. Just be nice to each other.
Yeah.
Just be nice, and you just respect each other's opinions. We're all here to learn, so be nice to each other. A couple of house rules for the in-person audience here. Toilets are directly opposite, so through the reception you'll see grey double doors. Just ask us and we'll take you there. Fire exits are also through that door, so the nearest fire exit is through the double doors opposite through the reception. In case of fire, please do not use the lifts. Just take the stairs. If anyone needs any tea, coffee, any soft drinks, they are also through the reception, so please come and speak to us. We'll take you on to the other side. And with that, I will hand over to Nicholas.
You want me to do that again?
No.
There's another slide.
It's fine.
Okay.
I think you did
skip
it.
through it.
Yeah, I'll hand it over to you. So.
Okay, cool. Start?
Yeah.
Okay, welcome. So, hi everyone. So I'm going to do a session on build and deploy OpenAI safety. So I would explain how you can easily deploy while considering safety factor like responsible AI in your module when you deploy. So we're going to ignore this one, skim past. So just obey by the rules, code of conduct. Okay, cool. Yeah, so thank you for Marcel, Matteo, and Chono that's now here. Give me a chance to speak in this Innovate AI, good initiative. Okay, so who am I? So this is a different picture than I could. Okay, so I'm a senior platform engineer from a company called Kanos, and recently been awarded Microsoft Azure MVP, I think last January. And I'm a big fan of sharing knowledge and developing communities. And these are some of the communities that I own. So I'm a part of Microsoft Azure User Group, Azure Community User Group, one of the organizers for Expert Live UK, which is a community to bring together all of the UK Microsoft communities in UK and all ones, and Microsoft Community Inside podcast. So that's interviewing expert, help people learn, keep up to date, and I'm a blogger as well, and social media here. Okay, enough of that. So in this agenda, I'm going to give you introduction. Firstly, very basic introduction on generative AI. So before it goes, and then what Azure OpenAI, and we're going to talk about the safety aspects, some risk management, and some advanced safety techniques, and give you a demo on content safety in Azure, as well as Shield, the latest release in Microsoft Build, and then finally close it with some ethical and secure advice on your AI deployment. Okay. So before I get started, who here use Azure OpenAI or generative AI? Good. Yeah. So it's like a buzzword for AI nowadays, but I want to explain to you what's generative AI. So it's basically a terms to create new content and by analyzing different patterns of data. And Microsoft recommend to follow the best practice of it. So you can use like GPT-3 modules, like an example of it, because those are quite old, but more cost effectively as well. And Microsoft recommended to use AI safety for the best practice to make it to deploy your AI securely and safely. Okay, so I want to give you a summary of how Azure OpenAI works with in OpenAI. So who here saw this model before, diagram from Microsoft? Anyone? Yeah. Good. So you know what it is, right? So how this works is you make a call, which could be like a completion API or a different API, and it can split into asynchronous or synchronous, like 2 calls. Asynchronous means that it's been monitored by someone Microsoft. It has 30 days winter retention period as well. And then someone is always in the loop of that. So someone always filters those data. And asynchronous checks is basically like detect harmful content in your OpenAI. So it could be like checking for prompt injection or not. So that's injection. So majority of time when we do like prompt injection or detect like prompt stuff in the AI, it will be synchronous data. So synchronous data is mostly used for large organization as well. And this bit fine tuning is kind of, it's less used at the moment, but it's for like tuning your model and use it for 2 calls, synchronous and asynchronous data. And how Azure OpenAI works is that you break it up into tokens. Like each word will be a primary token, and there's a limit to that token. So, sorry, you can't see all of them. Okay, let's zoom in, but I think that's be fine. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this is a framework for Azure AI risk management. So it's like a mitigation layers. So how it breaks down into 4 different layers, right? The first layer is the module. The module is the first layer is like use a technique called reinforcement learning from human feedback. So that would check for like various outputs, check if it's match the data that you want as well. And it can use like, you can get someone to check the output if it matches real data. And safety system, that's all about mitigating risk in your system. So it could be like content safety, what I'm going to talk about, or it could be like any other risk management stuff, flows process. And system message and grounding, that's like how you can, it's kind of like RAG. Have you heard of RAG? Retrieval augmented generation. It's just pretty much how you can customize the outputs and make it more relevant to your data that you want. And the user experience is like responsible use, make it show that it's all ethical, safe, and follow best practice from Microsoft to use. So these are just 4 layers that was recommended by Microsoft. And there's a code of conduct for using Azure OpenAI as well. Okay, so what's new in AI safety? I also want to talk about what's been out recently in Microsoft Build. So it's Prompt Shield, which I'm going to talk about soon. It's the ability to detect block injection attacks on your OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, and grounded detection, detect hallucination. So whether the result is not what you expected or it made up some facts and stuff. And safety system messages is like how you can steer the outputs to have more responsible outputs, so it better you need. And some safety evaluation is pretty much like assess the application if it's jailbreak or not by generating content risk, as well as risk and safety monitoring for mitigation. So both of those are now available in preview, and some of them it's coming soon, some of these features here. So I just want to point this out from. So I want to talk about a new threat that's been released called the skeleton key. Anyone heard about this? So skeleton key in Azure Safety, it's like, you see in the diagram on the left, that's like a diagram that shows the skeleton key. So it's like, it's an authorized, like, if you be,
Are you talking about the exploit?
no.
Okay, sorry. There is a exploit that's also called a skeleton key. So this is totally different thing, right?
Yeah, so I think this is like a jailbreak thing. So it's
Yeah,
when
exactly.
authorized user bypass security measures in order to misuse AI and stuff for their own personal use. This is when, and I think you can see the system, the diagram on your left, when it's show the user experience and the AI experience, and the image on the right informing that how it's being trained like to pick up like safety as well. So you like cocktail, and through this conversation, it tell you whether it's been misused or not. So, and Microsoft has been to mitigate this risk of like skeleton key. Microsoft introduced a tool called Parrot. So if you look at that, that can help you that mitigates these risks. So identifying risk in Azure AI. So firstly, you can use it to, like when you develop like a machine learning workspace, you can use like the fundamental security and to enhance the OpenAI. You can use it with Azure Insights, Key Vault security, just to enhance and boost the accuracy of the security of the module. So, and you can also integrate it for like security and ethical AI as well. So on the diagram on the right, it helps show you how this tool called Pi works. So it uses core system engine as well as an agent, and it sends some like prompt, and then it does the target AI. So this target AI could be your Azure OpenAI or a different AI that you use. So the principle responsible AI. So Microsoft recommending to follow the best practice. So one of the best practices is how Azure OpenAI is using the responsible AI module. So it's like fairness, reliability, safety, all these is follow. So an example of this could be like a recruitment software is biased through like training data, and you have like a pool of like CV stuff, and you implement like a program that use AI that's unfairly, and you have to make decisions like more transparent. So that's where it comes. So the AI, and in order to make it more transparent, you can get HR review to review those CV, so everything's more fair for everyone. So just want to point this out. So has anyone heard of Prompt Shield that's been released from Microsoft, Bill? Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry, I'm on live. Okay, so Prompt Shield is quite a new feature that's released from Microsoft, Bill, a few months ago. And it's basically involved two criteria. So it identify attempts to extract sensitive information from AI in order to enhance security, and it used the jailbreak detection and an indirect profanity filter. So that profanity filter, it's like filter out offensive language on your AI. And the content safety API is just helps you the AI in order to make it more safe and follow the best practice by Microsoft, the AI responsible module. So I want to explain how AI prompt shield works. So this is some diagram. So as you know, this is quite like a new feature in Microsoft Build. So how it works is that it uses user prompt and it uses document prompt. So user prompt should be like any malicious attacks on your OpenAI, while document attack could be like harmful like things that exploit the vulnerability in AI systems. So this diagram is what I got from like on the left hand side, it shows like it's been rejected, the sending response of the threat, and it's picking up from the content safety as well. The diagram on the right shows how prompt shield works and stuff. So how prompt injection work, and you scroll the vulnerability. For example, you write a story, you have some code attack, and there's a model like model GPT-3, and it's been outputted that there's a prompt. And you can use like AI prompt shield to help mitigate these vulnerability. So I want to give you some demo on it because I've demoed quite a bit on it. So this demo is going to be like how introduce Azure OpenAI with some content safety and prompt shield. So tell you how you can mitigate those risks on top just mentioned. So hopefully I'm sharing my screen. Okay, cool. Can you see? Yeah, cool. Okay, cool. Have you seen this? So this is Azure AI Studio. So if you want that, so you just type AI Studio in here, and it's basically this really. That's it. So what I'm going to show you is, anyone used AI Studio before? Cool. So the first thing I want to show you is that how to quickly set up like content safety. So first thing you do is you create a connection like I've created earlier. And when I create a connection, you can see these kind of like threshold prompts, completion, whether you want to mitigate against violence, hate, sexual, self-harm, or violence, or the completion of it. So you have two filters. So I've already done one already. I just want to show you what I did. And this is how you just easily to switch on prompt shield. But I can show you how you can implement prompt shield in code base as well. So you just switch it, just toggle that in, and you turn it on, and you can have a custom block list on certain words that you want to filter in your AI module. Yeah, so I've done that. So once you've done here, there's a chat playground here. So it's easy as, let me see, you can see Kara. So how it works is that I've already tested it. So you should get something like this. The prompt was filtered by triggering Azure OpenAI content safety. I tell you the reason. So how to make a mocktail cocktail. You see those like in the diagram before. So if I show you another one, so this, hide this. Actually, let me put it back. Okay, sorry about that. So I just want to show you some risk. So this is like violence and stuff. So you can protect your AI with something like mitigate some risk. And so the another thing is that you could do in your, you can use this for prompt shield as well. So imagine you have a code base that you have certain prompts, like so the first one would be a normal prompt on your shield. And let me just give you a show. So sorry, this is VS Code if someone said. So to create this, this will be a content safety API address. And then this would be your AI key for your content safety. And I think it's only, you can use it now on East US now because it's preview. How this will work is like, it is through the code, but I can show you how it works in the portal as well. So how this works is that if you have any side, it is how a normal one will work. So false is meaning that there's no prompt like on your, it doesn't detect any attacks in prompt shield. So if I were to use now another input in here, which is quite similar to it, but it's got some data in it, some in the documents. This one should detect that it's been detected by using detect the prompt injection. So let me just press that here. So true. So document analysis attack detected is true. That means that it is detect any injection within OpenAI. So you can also use it by the portal as well. So on this portal, you can just do the injection as well. Just type the command. So for example, this is just one of those injections to show you how easy to pick up from the portal. So you can just copy like jailbreak prompt. Like this is from GitHub anyway, just showing you like a basic one. And go how easy, just paste it here. And you can see it's being recognized as jailbreak. So there's two ways that you can do it. More of a practical way would be the code when like developers would like to implement that in a code base, like as JSON and just query that, you get that prompt on it. But it is more of a visual one for on the AI Studio. Okay, so am I moving too fast or everyone can hear? Oh, is it clear? Good, cool. So it's quite easy really, but before you do the prompt or anything, you also need to set up your deployment. So it could be like a module, like mine's for GPT-4, or you can have GPT 3.5, but you can see it's with the connection when deployed. So how easy it is to do those. Okay, let's go back. Yeah, so security best practice. So I just wanted to tell you some about some like best practice for like deploying Gen AI in Azure with OpenAI. So first of all, always use minimum privilege and identity. So that means is that you only need to give the OpenAI permission what you need to do to certain tasks and use manage identity and stuff and 2FA, just very the basic things as well. And this data protection is like always encrypt certain data, sensitive data, and encrypt it at rest, so no one like get hold of it. And AI model security is like do regularly scan your using like Azure Security Center on the resources just to see if it's meet recommended best practice. And also, sorry. And also monitoring login could be like, you could monitor like the AI, like where the Azure OpenAI other resource interact with. You want to monitor it, and you can apply by industry appliance, GDPR or EAP. So I'm not sure entirely what it is. Yeah, and update management. So as you update certain like resources in Azure, you want to monitor it as well, so you have the latest updates. So this is a barcode of all the resources that's in the GitHub gist. And this is a survey from I think the Microsoft thing that you should like do. All like is like as for the community season of AI, which is quite a good initiative for people to learn AI like today. So Microsoft want to hear everyone's opinion by giving us feedback. Any question? So I think that's finished. Anyone have any question? But I'll leave that here for everyone to scan. Any question? I want some question.
How does it know when it's?
Second?
I know you said that text that if there's an attack,
Yeah.
but how does it work it out? How does it work it out that there was attack?
How does it work out if it's attacked? It's like, it just depends on the document really, the document attack. So if there's any, it's like, when I go back here, I'll show you. So I just switch it on, but how it normally works is that it depends on if there's a,
Comparing something with something.
yeah. So I just switch it on. So I think it's easy, but you can use it as two ways, like the JSON what I told you for dev, or you just switch it on, but that would just check if there's an attack on your code, the API.
Is it just searching for certain words or
So I'm not entirely sure. Yeah,
It's
but
probably
I think it's just like, it's someone like jailbreak it, someone trying to brute force the OpenAI.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite good to know that your AI safety. So it's by that as well. So it is two options I showed you, one by portal, one by code. So I recommend the code option because it's more dev side as well. Any other question? I think. Let me put it
So the
back.
skeleton key has it.
Yeah, so that's quite new, the skeleton key.
Is that so when you writing your code, you pass in the key? Is that what the key?
No, skeleton key is like a technique. That's what someone like, it's someone that got authorized access that misused AI and stuff. And then, yeah, and then that's when Microsoft introduced that Pi. You know when I showed you Pi? Yeah, yeah, that's how you can, that GitHub repo mitigate all those risks, all the best practice or deploying AI safety. Any other question?
Oh, good. I was going to say as well, there's at Microsoft Bell, Mark Rosevich did a good talk on AI security, and I think for more information as well, what Nick has covered today, on like how people bypass AI, jailbreaking, and how Microsoft's mitigating that. So I really recommend that talk as well. If you just go to the build recordings for Mark Rosevich.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Any more question? More question, please. That's fine. Yeah, don't forget to scan your barcode. Microsoft would like some more feedback.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, thank you. Thanks, Nicholas.
Well,
So should we be starting or should we give everyone another 3 minutes?
Yeah, maybe give it another minute or two.
That's fine.
Sorry.
Let's take a few seconds for the picture. This is an amazing.
Right. Do you want just the slide or myself as well?
Because you're the Wonder Woman or Spider Woman, whatever it is.
No, this is Captain Marvel, but yes, we call Captain Marvel.
Well corrected.
Well corrected, yes. We're all learning here.
Oh, no worries, no worries. So I have a bit of a thing for the Avengers. I mean, generally everything that I do is movie themed, but the Avengers got stuck a little bit. So somehow I ended up with the same thing last year, even though it was a different topic. And I thought, why not come back with the same? And of course, it's a season of AI, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think we're good to start the session. Thanks, Angeliki. Yeah, stage is all yours.
Amazing. So let me quickly test the clicker just because it's first time using this one. So, sorry? But am I?
no, I'll click on your mouse. And then
Okay. I'm liking it. Globally and the world economics impact of anything to do with AI, anything to do with myself being on screen sometimes like this. And the reason being is that we almost take for granted sometimes all the fantastic technology that we're blessed with these days. We don't necessarily take a step back to think about what it means for our society and how essentially that drives all the economic forces. So a little bit about me. As I mentioned, my name is Angeliki Patsiavu. I have been working with Avanade, which is one of the co-founders in the Microsoft ecosystem for the last 3 years, most recently in the business application space, hence what I meant by saying I'm a little bit different in that sense. But I am a hybrid because at this point I'm on my third career. I started off in Greece, and hence the non-English accent, but I'm Greek-Italian, and I've been here for the last 11 years, so it's very much home. And talking about hybrid, I'm a business applications MVP here in the UK, but I'm also ProSci certified because my previous career was in change management, where I focused a lot on user adoption and how to implement tech that makes a difference, that gives you the return on investment. And even before that, I was a marketing manager in all sorts of CRM systems. So I started in CRM, very much my love language, very much what I work with day to day. But I also do appreciate that the part of these systems is not just a standalone. It's when we work with communities like yourself, with the Microsoft 365 community, just to really bring it home. And with that in mind, why this session today in economics? Well, in fact, when it comes to my academic background, I'm an economist. I did 5 years in academia within the economic space. And I thought, what better way to bring this home than to combine this with AI? So completely different to what I usually talk about. But here we are. And also, when it comes to the community, you might have heard of the term tech evangelist. So I decided to coin a term called human evangelist because there's so many people, so many fantastic people that talk about all the great tech that we should be using, all the greatest and latest. For example, what Nick was saying about all the latest in content safety. But it's also important to consider the human behind everything that we build. Important to consider how we're going to build something that is going to make an impact when it comes to UI and UX, when it comes to accessibility. And ultimately, as a business, we are getting back the return on investment. So all this is important. You find in the community speaking a fair bit, you find in the card into my blog as well. And generally, I love geeky chat, so feel free to reach out. But enough about me. What is the agenda? And I promise it's not just about the lovely Captain Marvel here. So we're going to start with a very brief, super brief summary of all the kind of like big numbers that have generated this momentum that AI has had in the last 3 years or so. So some highlight numbers just to paint the picture of how we got here, that it becomes such a buzzword that everyone inserts in every conversation. Then we're going to look at, from an economics perspective, what have we observed within the economy when it comes to tech infusing our financial services, our trading operations, and whatnot. And with that in mind, obviously, it's not just about changing our vocabulary and maybe changing our perspective a little bit, but there's an ethical element to it when it comes to using AI in the best of our and most ethical of our abilities. And once we consider that, it becomes quite apparent how we're meant to be designing our own products, because if we understand our responsibilities, then it gives us that fresh outlook into how we should be creating all this, all these co-pilots, all this amazing content. And then we're going to focus on 3 things, because it's not just about the theory, but we want to take it home. So first, we're going to start with what it means for ourselves as professionals, what it can mean for our personal skills. So we're going to do a bit of myth debunking and then some practical tips and tricks about how we can reimagine our professional career in the era of AI. At the same time, we're also going to look at it from a team's perspective, not Microsoft 365 teams, but our productivity in the collaboration space and how we can envisage, even within the DevOps space, productivity, which is such a unique and complicated measure. And finally, ultimately, we're building for someone, whether we have partners and we're building for clients or whether we're building for our own business, we got customers. And it's important that we also consider what it means for them to benefit from all these amazing features. Because if we are not championing the customer, if we're not ultimately building minimum lovable products rather than minimum viable products, then what are we doing? Okay, so this is our agenda for today. Let's get started. I want to start actually with a quote, amazing quote from Einstein, which is about understanding in depth. In this case, AI, he wasn't necessarily referencing to that, but I think it's a good reflection in terms of whether we truly understand something or we're just super high level because it's the buzzword that everyone talks about. We've heard ChatGPT enough times, so we'll probably insert it into a conversation or Copilot. But do we truly understand what it has meant for our economy, for example, in the last few years? So let's try and demystify a few things. Obviously, when this whole AI hype first started a few years ago, ChatGPT was at its infancy, Midjourney was a thing. So I'm thinking like November 2022, even July 2022, actually. And we were like, okay, it's a high, but it will die down eventually. Which is funny, actually, because it did not. So if we look at ChatGPT alone, within about 2 months, it reached 100 million users. That's a lot. Just to paint a bigger picture, Spotify took 10 years. Social media like Instagram or Snapchat took somewhere in between, in the 6 to 7 year mark. And a lot of other platforms. Yet ChatGPT shows up, ignores completely every other trend in the world, and says, I'm here to stay, pretty much. Now, with that in mind, when it comes to copilots, I stopped counting, to be honest. I stopped counting September last year. At that point, I was told the number was 152, and then I thought, I can't be counting. 150 plus is what I'm going to stick with. Now, the way we count how many copilots is complicated because there's copilots in something, copilot for something, copilot that are, lowercase c, uppercase c. For the love of God, please at least spell it right, which is there's no hyphen in between. There's no capitalized P. There's only uppercase and lowercase c. So please take that away at least from today. Clearly, I'm triggered. But putting that aside, there is a clear focus, commitment from Microsoft to drive this space. So how can it be slowing down? Some more numbers for you, since we are here to put our economist hat on. So McKinsey did some research, and they forecasted trillions in economic benefits. If we think of the economies of scale of all this tech, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. Now, to put this even further into perspective, let's talk about productivity. Now, within the DevOps space, the general dev space, productivity is a very important measure. Even from a research perspective, it's very hard to ultimately put a number on it. However, things like GitHub Copilot really reinvented and reimagined how productivity can be driven, which is fantastic. And even year on year, seeing those kind of numbers, so between 0.2 and 3.3%, is massive because we are talking about a shift that we couldn't see before. Productivity is not something that we should be only monitoring day to day or week by week because it's just so complex. But imagine the economies of scale of putting this beyond a team, beyond a company, and thinking of the whole world. So, I mean, let's be honest, right? This is not going to slow down. Can we agree on that? Yeah? Awesome. Another nice myth. This is simple. The economic impact is obvious. I don't think so. So, let's look together at some of the vocabulary that is super important to have when we are talking about AI generally. So what we're going to look at now is not specific to a model, is not specific to Microsoft, is not specific to any tech. It's actually about understanding AI at its core. So foundation models. You probably have heard of LLMs, so the large language models. They're not the only models, actually, but these are the foundation models that we started with. So GPT was one of them, hence ChatGPT. There's many others as well, but the idea is these are foundation models. They have been trained on massive data sets, like massive. And they have multiple benefits. So first of all, with very minimal fine-tuning, you can start using them. Hence why ChatGPT was so popular to begin with. Now, another benefit is that, hence the name foundational, they can be used to create specialized AI apps. So this is why they become so popular. Now, when it comes to this kind of models, there's not just large language models. There's a lot of diversity. They start from small ones, so you might have heard of 5.3, then we go to medium ones, and eventually the large ones that we've all probably heard more or less of. But we need to remember there's quite a spectrum, and it's important that they all exist because depending on the work that we want to do, we might not necessarily want to go too hardcore and full force into an LLM. It's expensive, it takes time as well, and ultimately, if you're trying to achieve a very simple task, it just doesn't make sense. Another term. So tokens. So the AI tokens are a very important term. They are a foundational unit of computational speed. Like all of these models have this computing power and they're trying to perform a task. Now, similar to how you would consider probably cryptocurrency, this is another version of a currency that we can consider. And why do I say that? Because in this new world, all of these models are driving in their own way economic growth. So why not consider them as a level of currency? And maybe in the future, they could be used as such. Talking about the economy, and the economic models. So you may have heard of the traditional supply-demand curve, right? Now, very similarly, when it comes to these AI models, they are in demand on their own, but also all the tech that is driving it. So for example, those servers to process that power. There's a reason why companies like NVIDIA are so powerful right now. They can't produce servers fast enough. And even competitors don't even see them as competitors, because if you just need that tech, you just need it. Like, it doesn't matter who's doing what. You're going to have that monopoly in a way. So this kind of supply-demand chain is driven by who has the most fine-tuned or the most attractive models in the market, and who has the processing power as well. Furthermore, we're going to talk about flops. Has anyone heard of the term flops? It's not about how an app could be flopping. Flops? Anyone? Okay, cool. We're going to learn something new today. Love it. So flops is an acronym. It stands for floating points per second. Floating operations per second. So what does that do? So this is showing us the computational speed of the model. So essentially, how quickly can we achieve that task that we gave it? Now, this is very important because when we have any kind of model, small, medium, large, doesn't matter, its efficiency is going to be very important. How quickly we get to the output means that we can consume more or less energy as we go, but also it's efficiency for us as a business, right? We don't want a co-pilot that takes 20 minutes every time we ask it a question as a simple answer. So this becomes a very important metric. And this is how we assess the efficiency. So these basics are important because as we kind of change our vocabulary, enrich our vocabulary, we realize that the way these models are built has major economic impact. So what prompted all this thinking is this fantastic article that I read from the World Economic Forum earlier this year. The link is there as well. And they were looking at exactly the economic impact of AI. Obviously, they are in their own way a research organization as well. So they're looking at a lot of this. It was very much a thought experiment about how far could this go. And there were some key perspectives there. So number one, since we spoke about tokens, so could this be the new currency? So traditional financial systems are volatile, and there's a reason why things like cryptocurrency have their own appeal, is because people were trying to find an alternative. So one of the speculations was, could there be a future where AI tokens become a new borderless currency, a new global currency that could be similar to how we saw gold or fiat currencies back in the day? Which is actually an interesting concept, because imagine if we were trading as such. Back to flows. So, as I mentioned, when it comes to the efficiency of an AI model, we have to look at two aspects: the speed and the efficiency. So, essentially, how quickly can we get to a result of a task with the least amount of energy? This is what will define how competitive our model is as well, especially if we're trying to monetize it, which is usually the case, right? And even though traditionally, the way we measure economic growth, we know GPT, right? Economic output per person. Imagine if this was the new measure. Imagine if this was the new measure and we could trade based on tokens. So this would be a very interesting alternative approach. Let's look at another scenario. The inevitable monopoly of it all. Remember back in the day when you had the personal computer show up, and then you had places like Microsoft or Apple that had this, in a way, monopoly between them? Or when Google came up with a search engine. Very similarly, whoever holds the power of the most refined LLMs, for example, holds a lot of economic power. When a few years ago, Microsoft and OpenAI forged their exclusive partnership, that meant something in terms of the monopoly. Now, granted, they're not the only players in the market anymore, but that still means a lot. So it might not be a pure monopoly, might be a bit of a subset, but that still has impact. And of course, with this comes responsibility, because when it comes to the ethical implications, we need to think about the social benefits and not just the private business benefits. We need to think about data privacy. We need to think about how we ethically mine. And taking it a step further, we've spoken about borderless currencies. We've spoken about how we could be inventing the wheel on measuring economic growth. But what if the owners / influencers of those models would be their own version of a central bank? That is pretty powerful. And what do I mean by that? What do we know about a central bank? So, for example, England, so think about England before Brexit, or even a place like Scandinavia. So they were in the Eurozone and part of the European Union, but they did not have the euro because they had their own central bank. They control their own monetary policy, their own growth policies, which gives you a lot of independence and influence. Similarly, if we considered the owner or those that are influencing those LLMs, they have a lot of power as well in terms of driving those partnerships and that exclusivity, and that monopoly can really drive a whole economy. We saw very clearly what happened when OpenAI, for example, forged that exclusive partnership with Microsoft, or when there was turbulence with the leadership board. These are very clear indicators of how this is driving the economy and the influence level power of what a central bank can do as well, especially if we consider tokens as a currency of its own. So, talking about ethics in the field, there's a few things that we need to consider. Now, we know that AI stands for artificial intelligence, right? We know that. But what if it meant applied innovation, and then the ethical part comes from the fact that we are trying to drive a new type of culture, and we're driving it for human impact rather than adding this negative connotation of it being artificial. I'll give you an example of how this shift in mindset can look like. So in the creative space, for example, in the creative arts, there's some criticism about how you could take some income away from artists, or how you, let's say, as a creator, could be seen if you're using this kind of AI tools rather than starting completely from scratch. Let's say you're a marketeer and someone asks you, did you write this email campaign yourself, or is it ChatGPT created? And sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not, but there's still sometimes a taboo with it, because we're looking at this as something artificial. We're giving it actually quite a lot of power, and we're taking away the power from the individual. But if we looked at it as an enabler for innovation, as a way of applying our own personal mindset into it, then we take away that negative connotation. And that's one step closer to the ethical side. Now, what do we mean by the ethical responsibilities? First of all, it's a team sport. You know how they say it takes a village? This is exactly it. So competition, we talked about how this can be a monopoly. So eventually, there will be more regulation. There's already regulation on EU level, US level, and whatnot. But we're going to see this happening more and more, because it's important that we maintain the social benefits. The private business benefits will always prevail if we don't take any measures. The second one is data privacy. Now, how many times have you seen scandals because people did not take this seriously? You put something that is business confidential into ChatGPT, and then You've already given your business data away. The model is training on it. That's a breach. But that's an obvious breach. There's many things, like what Nick was saying earlier. Data privacy is not something that we could make as a mistake on, but sometimes if we don't protect our own data, including our own models and our own tools, things could go wrong. This is ultimately our lifeblood. Pricing differentiation. So when it comes to creating those models and charging for them, so what we've seen, for example, is like, say, if you want Copilot X or Y, this is the price per month. Or if you want Copilot Studio, this is the amount of messages or tokens you'll get, and for every payment. Cool. However, if you were thinking about the social benefits, sometimes it's also important to differentiate your price. A very obvious example that Microsoft already does is that in the not-for-profit sector, in the education sector, you get significant discounts. So this is an example of pricing differentiation. But in reality, this is not just about those two types of industries. The more we differentiate, there's two benefits. Number one, there's social benefits because there's the affordability element. But let me tell you, from an economics perspective, a business makes a lot more money by doing this pricing differentiation, because instead of having a single price point and whoever can make it great, you're capturing a whole curve of price points people can make and make money out of all of them. So there's a lot of benefits from this ethical kind of practice. Another, obviously, we mentioned about social benefits and how we are able to use AI for good, tech for good initiative, right? And with this comes the ultimate impact and the ultimate ethical responsibility, which is that we have to be inclusive and we absolutely must be accessible as well. This is not a nice to have. This is not a nice to have in anything that we do, but unfortunately, there are so many misconceptions when it comes to these kind of principles. So, how many times have you either believed yourself or thought about or heard others say that AI will take our jobs in a kind of Terminator kind of style, right? Have we all kind of heard that kind of doomsday scenario? There you go. Let me tell you, Skynet is not here. We're good. Because it's about a mindset. I'm not going to say that the landscape hasn't evolved, and of course skill sets as well, but instead of thinking of this doomsday scenario, we can really shift our mindset by finding a desire to grow alongside the tech, which I think is actually exciting because it gives us the opportunity to look at what it means for us and our productivity. So some people say they don't want AI to take away the creative task. They want it to do its laundry. Okay, let's find ways to automate laundry. Maybe there's ways to look at home automation assistants are using this kind of AI to let you know when your laundry is done, when it is stuck. There's so many ways. And this is obviously a specific, very simple case. But when it comes to us within the development space as well, there's a lot of opportunities. GitHub Copilot is definitely one of them. There's many other things as well, even all the way from MS Build. Like some of my favorite kind of pro dev features were all the loop integrations. So I was super excited to see all the cool stuff that is coming. So for example, you can have adaptive cards that are showing you a preview from Azure DevOps. It can show you a preview of a mermaid diagram. So many cool things happening on Loop that us as developers can maximize our productivity, because instead of saying, hey, mate, can you help me? I'm stuck on this ticket. I'm debugging this ticket. And then you have to go into ADO, authenticate, you suddenly have this instant access. You maximize your collaboration and your productivity because you're minimizing all the boring admin. So this is an example of how AI can be super, super cool. Now, another thing is that we need to be very assertive and say, we understand the landscape is changing, AI is changing, the market. So what does it mean for us? We need to own our development paths, our learning paths. We can't just say that the skill sets that we used to have or currently have now will still be 100% the same and desired in the next X amount of years, for example. It's just not realistic, but we need to take action and say, which space or direction do I want to go in with what I know and have, and where I would like to take my career. Now, when it comes to how the skill sets are evolving, there's a lot of opportunities within the testing space. I've particularly recently gone down a rabbit hole of automation testing, both within the pro dev and the low code space. There's a lot of opportunity within this kind of tech because as you're building it, you want to make sure that its efficiency is up to par before you release it to the wild. So this is a quite interesting area to explore your skill set in and see, what can I do within the testing space? What can I do within maybe the content safety space? There's a lot of new skill sets and areas that we can become trailblazers in. Another one is becoming an evangelist. So if we think that the train has already left the building and it's a case of, are you going to get on board or are you going to be left behind? We don't want to think about be leaving behind, but we also don't want to think about our teammates being left behind. So if we become our own versions of an evangelist and get other people on board, then the productivity outcomes, those that we looked at earlier, and those economies of scale, will only keep appearing more and more because we are getting more people involved. This is an exponential compounding feature. And let's just remember that every day it's an opportunity to learn something new, whether it's because you're reading a new blog, whether it's because you're in the playground and found a really cool feature. There's so many opportunities. Now, if we go away from the professional and individual level to a team level and look at productivity specifically, there's a few different opportunities there. Again, within thinking like an evangelist, because it's very natural. We're human. Everyone's human. We are resistant to change. So if we become one of those really cool trailblazer people that start talking about the latest cool features and get more people involved, then everyone will benefit. So things that we can do. So to begin with, think about what you can do within your team, within your company, to establish the culture of innovation, a safe space where you can trial and error, fail fast, learn, move on. This becomes a culture rather than a one-off experiment that will help you find your own pathway, but also the team's pathway to better productivity. Maybe some use cases that you find that the whole team could benefit, for example. This is the place where you empower people to explore their own curiosity and passion about the tech. Maybe someone is excited about Loop. Maybe someone is excited about content safety. Maybe someone is excited about diagramming and its new integration. So find a way to bring everyone closer and making it more inclusive. The other way to think about it is as a business leader. So if you're in a management position in your company, then you have to consider how you're going to give that love back to your employees. And this is why I'm mentioning the employee value proposition. You can't just be a company that does not allow people the time and give people the tools to invest in their own career day to day by having, let's say, courses that can help them upskill, maybe focusing on certifications. Show them that you're a company that wants to invest in them. Show them the benefits. Otherwise, you're going to lose your top talent and probably a lot more talent to those that do invest, that do give you the time. And it's not seen as a side of desk. Nice to have, but probably never get there. The other part is, since we were talking about productivity, again, this is a super, super hard measure. If you look at the GitHub team, they did a lot of research ahead of launching GitHub Copilot and as they were launching it, because, by the way, this was the first Copilot to go out, which is a really cool thing. And it went out way before all of the others, and it was probably still, preview to begin with. But I don't know how many people know how soon that came out and how long it took and the lessons learned from it. So GitHub did a very cool research on the measurements surrounding productivity and how complicated this is. And ultimately, there's no consensus, but it's more around find what it means for your team, find the benchmark that you feel comfortable with, and then start assessing it when you're using different kinds of tool, when you're introducing different methodologies, because otherwise, how are you going to find your own use cases? Another one is, again, bringing the evangelist mindset back. Think about hybrid collaboration. So I'm a big fan, as you can see, I have a Power Platform t-shirt here, and there's a reason for that. I advocate a lot for fusion collaboration and fusion teams, which is essentially bringing all of you lovely pro devs in the room, bringing all of our citizen developers or business technologists, however you love calling them, makers and whatnot, bring them in the same room. We all have technical skill sets of a certain type, different tech, but together, I think we can do magic. But to do that, you need to, again, create the right culture that brings everyone in the room for that hybrid collaboration. Because if you're saying, for example, nah, I'm good with my containers, I love .NET and I'll stay there, what is Power Platform? Or how can this give me that sustainability and that code coverage that I very well know and love through my JetBrains tools? There's so many things that we can learn from each other, so many cool products that could be complementing each other. So how do we learn better together? And again, when it comes, that's why I'm addressing all of the managers in the room and the leadership in the room. We need to role model this. We need to walk the walk, and we need to show to our teams that we're investing in them, and we're bringing everyone in the room. So we're not just saying, this is our dev team and they sit on their own, and then we have maybe a business applications team, and then maybe we have a testing team. Everyone should be part of the same conversation and the same opportunity. The final bit is what we give back to the clients, so our customers, in whatever way it means for your own business. So this is very important, and why I mentioned earlier the concept of a minimum lovable product. Has anyone heard of the term minimum lovable product? No. Okay, yes, awesome, awesome. So I'm a big fan of that. I get triggered by the intention of going for the minimum viable product because it clearly shows, in most cases, maybe not all, but in most cases, that there's an appetite for going for what can pass without too much, incompetence or too much aggression and feedback. But instead of that, we should be thinking about how we're going to excite our customers. How are they going to be like, hold on a second, I want this product. I don't want any other tool. I don't want any other product. I want this one. How do we get people excited again? And one way to do it is within our projects, we bring a little bit of a change management mindset. So we can't really say we're going to get all the way to the fantastic product without understanding where we stand now. We need to understand where we stand as a business. How mature are we in the market? How ready are we to launch something trailblazing? But we also need to understand our competitors as well, because this will create the benchmark where a competitive edge could be. The other point that was also mentioned earlier was accessibility and inclusivity, but not just in the general, kind of way, but make it specific, make it from your people that understand, for example, people that have disabilities, and they could help you understand what some of accessibility scenarios could look like. Or maybe some diverse customers that come in a focus group. Don't just look at this as general principles that you're going to have in a tick box on your ADO ticket and move on, but think of them as an opportunity to get early feedback, get some early fans in the room, make groupies out of them, and the word of mouth will make it very, very impactful. The other way is localization. And for this, there's a lot of opportunities within both the product and the functional space. So product, we all know about Azure Cognitive Services and all the cool things it provides. So one of my favorite latest features is the text-to-speech features that can get you all sorts of cool things in terms of real-time translation. And for example, you can also now, not yet, because I think it's in preview in the coming weeks, but you can do video dubbing. So for a developer that has, let's say, a video that needs to be demonstrated to employees globally, Instead of having to worry about paying an agency or going out there and finding whoever can translate this for you, you get, in so many languages, the automatic version. So things like this clearly show us that there's an opportunity to bring more people into the picture by saying, yes, the language might be by default English, but imagine of all the different ways we can make our brands more powerful, our products stand out even more by localizing in different ways, whether it's a SharePoint site, whether it's a brand video, a marketing campaign of any sort. The opportunities are truly endless, and it has such a halo effect. And finally, very, very important as well, the well-being benefits. So when we're talking about giving back to customer, we're not just thinking about how we're going to make them excited, but also what does it mean for them? Ultimately, another principle of being human is that we're selfish by nature. So what are we going to give back to the customer? Are we giving them back financially something? Are they saving money? Are we helping them from a well-being perspective? Because this is about mental health. There's all sorts of opportunities. And this will also help them and help your loyalty, your retention. So this is what truly matters, giving back, but giving back in a way that is meaningful to the individual, not what we think is important. So just to summarize, because we are running out of time, let's summarize. So a bit of a cheesy outro, by the way. In the era of co-pilots, you can be an educated co-pilot, have a mission. We talked about many cool missions, instead of being at the mercy of a co-pilot without one. So with that in mind, we're going to end it here. Happy to take some quick questions, but otherwise, I really love getting to know all of you, and thank you so much for the time today. In terms of reaching out, feel free to connect on the socials. If you scan this QR code, this is a Linktree code, so you'll see all of my different socials, so feel free to connect. If you happen to be interested in a lot of movie-themed blogs, feel free to visit Empowered Humans. Very shameless plug for another user group that Nick and I are leading as well, Experts Live UK. And generally, thank you for your time, everyone. So feel free to reach out, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Angeliki. Very interesting. Feel free to take another short break. We've got next Benedict, who's going to showcase how you can use your own energy readings and data in AI for personal use with a talk on that, basically. So we're just going to set Benedict up for the next 5 minutes. But thank you, Angeliki. Thanks for the very insightful.
Does it work now if I start? I'm still working on it.
Probably way too much.
So Benedict's going to talk to us about how you can use your energy usage at home to apply AI for personal in your personal lives and how you can use that. So yeah, the stage is all yours, Benedict.
Myself.
Thank you.
Evening, everyone. Hope you can all. Can everyone hear me? Okay, first. Probably best is just to check on that. Awesome. So, bit introduction to myself. I'm Benedict. I am a manager at Standard within our software engineering practice. I specialize in Microsoft.NET and Azure primarily. Work across many different domains, currently in the energy space. Not necessarily time with this bit, but currently working for an energy client. But what I want to do here is really give a use case for, we've had this massive hype we have with AI at the moment. And I was thinking, what use cases are there? And I suddenly found this use case earlier this year. But as is all things, this wants to start with a story. So I just want to start by telling a bit of a story. So if we go back about a year, it's almost exactly a year actually. I was on holiday with some friends and I was sitting around the pool and doing that thing you always do on holiday by looking at my energy bills online. And I couldn't work out why it was that I had a massive kilowatt hour reading. When I put this quote into another energy supplier's website, it suggested, now, silly, I live on my own in a flat, and it was telling me the amount of energy I was using was enough for a family of 3 house. So I think, well, something's very wrong here. So as a matter of urgency, I looked into changing energy supplier. So as a matter of urgency, 9 months later, I changed energy supplier. Actually, first thing first, it was costing me a hell of a lot of money as well. And so then, 9 months later, as a matter of urgency, I changed energy supplier. On these newfangled energy companies, you've seen them all on the sides of buses and tube trains. And what really was I found amazing was the insights they had. The portal, the online portal, I have a smart meter, so it could tell me every half hour what my usage is. I had a hunch about what the issue could be. But anyway, I was looking at this portal, and also you'll see there's an API here, and that's a very, very important aspect to do with this talk. But looking at these insights and also talking to some others, I was able to change my energy usage, and I'll tell you, the hunch was confirmed. It was my hot water heater. It was on for 4 hours a night when it could have been on for 1 hour. So, and then very quickly I was able to make these changes, and then next bill, low kilowatt hour, done some changes, and of course, most importantly, not much money and a much happier me from it. So that's sort of a bit of the background. And then it sort of got me thinking as well. When I saw putting this together, when it comes to our energy bills, and this, I should emphasize, this is purely from a personal experience, but the balance of simplicity and transparency when it comes to these documents we get from energy companies and banks and credit card companies. And how actually simple and transparent are they? So let's start on the top right, top left here. I've got a little piggy bank here. Credit card statements, bank statements. What's the most important information on a credit card bill? What you owe and when. It's also quite transparent because there's a list of all your transactions, all your payments, but the credit cards I've been using, when I owe them and how much I owe them, is never the most prominent information there. I'm sometimes got to search for it. I haven't got great eyesight either, so I'm searching these documents. How much do I owe? Apps make it easier, but still, same thing with the phone bill. Pretty transparent. List of all of your SMSs, your phone calls, your internet usage. Still, they're not necessarily always simple. I was looking at a bill the other day and it had 2 months on it for a 1 month bill. And I don't understand why, where did this come from? I had to call them up and ask for a reason. Why? What does this bill mean? Let's come to this one, the payslip. Now, this is an interesting payslip. Actually, quite simple. At the end of the day, how much am I being paid? How much tax am I paying? Is it that transparent? And one could say I'm being a bit unfair here because they don't really have to provide information. I can go to HMRC, get my tax code, I can find out all the calculations, but that's a bit of hassle, really. But still, quite simple. Energy bills, I put them down here. Now, maybe I'm being unfair here because let's be honest, if an energy bill had every single one of your half-hour breakdowns, every bill that arrives each month would be the size of a small novel. How many half hours are there in every day? Multiply that by a month. But the thing is, even looking at my latest bills, I'm getting one usage number. Maybe I've got to search for my meter information. They have about 3 pages of FAQs. And I don't wish to be rude here, but not a single one of those FAQs is useful to what I'm trying to find out. They are trying to do better. They are doing better. All these people are trying to do better. I'm not trying to sound critical here, but yeah, they could be doing better on that front. Mortgages. That's an interesting one, a mortgage, because I found that one of all of them is probably the most transparent and the most simple, because it says, here's your current balance, here are all your remaining payments and when. Pretty simple. Maybe not quite on the top right where we want to be. That's where we want to be, right at the top right. Everything is simple, everything's transparent. And this is, I think, where the AI can help us. So when it comes to AI, what sort of things do we want to know? These are sort of things that I'm thinking, what do I want to know? And other people I've spoken to, what do they want to know? So what is my tariff and what's its details? Yes, your bill does tell you your tariff, and of course you can go to the website, find out information. But I was like, well, what is my tariff? What's the end date? What is, what's the daily charge? What's my standard rate? What was my consumption in June? So what was the total? What was the breakdown maybe by day? How much CO2 have I saved? Now, I'm 100% renewable and my energy supplier. So I can say, well, from my consumption, how many kilograms of CO2 have I prevented going into the atmosphere? Please interpret my bill. We've seen, here's a document. I can load it into Azure Document Intelligence. Tell me about it. What can you take out of this bill? And also, of course, account management. What's my address? Have I got my direct debit details right? That sort of thing. So it's not just information. It's also being about management as well. So what have I actually done? So at its core, I've put together, and this ties into that API I mentioned, I've made a Copilot. That's a capital C, one word, to clarify for me. And I made a Copilot, and it's written in Python. Now, I'm not a Python person, I'm a .NET person, so this is my first proper usage of Python, so do forgive me. Yeah, but fundamentally, it's powered by Click. It does all the CLI stuff for me. But what I try to do is effectively wrap the API with all the functionality. So what can we do? I can get to my account. We just spoke about accounts. I can get to my consumption. I can talk about my consumption. I can ask about energy products as well. And this is where the AI comes in. We'll come to this in a bit as well. A bill. Maybe even work with a bill. Tell me about my bill. And this sounds exciting, the chat. I can talk to my data. Before we get to the AI stuff, we'll just drill a bit further in just to give you an idea of what stuff you can do. So with consumption, I can list my consumption. I get a maximum, the minimum, the total, a UI. We'll come to this as well because people like user interfaces. But fundamentally, what I'm showing you by these screenshots is
we're getting down to fine tune these. Oops. We're getting down to fine tuning. Sorry. Yeah, we're just trying to fine tune all these insights. So if we're looking to list our energy usage, and obviously I need to give it my API key, my meter information, these can obviously come in from the environment variables, that sort of thing. But from date to date, how do I want to group it? By default, half hour, but we want to do it by month. A query, yes, I support James Path queries like in the Azure CLI. So really start to fine tune all that. And of course, I've put in one about converters as well. And then just quickly look at an example. This is actual data from my meter, and coming through now. And this is just from the 1st of June to about the 4th of June, and just an example of some of the data that comes back. This is very, very similar to what you get back from the actual energy supplier endpoints. Just to give you an idea. The things I know what you're thinking. It's like, well, that's really cool, Benedict, but we're looking at a CLI here. Now, we're devs people, we're ops people, we love CLIs. Sometimes we prefer CLIs to websites, let's be honest. We all know it. But does my mum and dad want to download this? Do my friends want to download this? I mean, heck, do I want to use this if I'm just trying to find my insights, or if I want to find out about my data? So we said, well, let's have a UI. Oh, sorry, that's a query from how I can put a query in for getting the consumption data out. Let's have a UI. You just put the UI, I put a UI in here. So yeah, here's UI. I can select some stuff, I can type some information in and get it out. Yeah, this is powered by Gradio. If you haven't used it, it's amazing platform to very quickly get a UI up and running. But still, okay, it's giving us raw data. We want to ask for data. We want to ask questions. And this now is where the AI comes in. So this is a video I recorded. It's not a live demo. This is definitely a video. So for this underneath, so this is that chat feature I mentioned. Underneath, it's using OpenAI. It's being coordinated by LangChain underneath to do the actual mediation. I'm using the GPT-4o model as well to power this. So let's have a look at a CLI-based experience that's going first. So we start it up. I'm going into my Copilot. So I'm going to ask the first question: what was my consumption between two particular dates? 1st of June this year. It goes away. But of course, underneath there's tooling, so it comes back the response. So it was 41 kilowatt hours. Underneath, LangChain has got LangChain tools that link into the links into the API, so it knows which tools to where to call it. There we are. I've got it to translate that into the CO2. So I prevented 8 kilograms of CO2 entering the atmosphere in that 1 week. As I say, all powered by LangChain tools underneath. It knows then from my question where to go, which endpoints it needs to call. When was my maximum consumption during May? It knows it goes for a maximum. It was on the 15th of May. It knows that's fine. That's when my hot water's on. So I can understand that. If it was something else, I'd be a bit worried. So then I can ask, let's go for an account information. What's my MPAN? The meter point admin number. And that's my meter point admin number. Now the next response is, what I asked then is, what is my grid supply point? Now this is not available on my account. But what did the AI come back with? It tells me my is 12 and in the East Midlands. I live in Wimbledon. I don't think Wimbledon's in the East Midlands. So here's an example of where we need to do fine tuning to the AI. The prompt needs a bit of a fine tuning. I need to do a bit more here with the prompt. Now I know about this response, we can try and put guards in to protect against this sort of thing. That's not, I can tell you, that's not correct. There might be correct information somewhere, but it's certainly not correct for my meter. But then finally, I've asked the question, what's the weather today? I've told it you're an expert in energy information from their particular supplier. So yes, it says, well, I don't do weather. Go to BBC Weather if you want that information. So that's a bit of an example of how we use the AI. So underneath, as I said, we're using tools within LangChain, so it knows where to go and get my energy information from, where to get my account information, and things like that. Just the other example I showed was how to interpret a bill. So this is another example. So this is actually using a bill file from my previous energy supplier. And all I did for this one was effectively say I used PyPDF2 to extract all the text from a bill, send that off to OpenAI, and then told it to please send me back this JSON object with this particular information. and it comes back. Obviously, I've removed my the supplier and my address, but this is all information that came from my last energy bill. Able to extract all that information very easily, very nicely. But then we can now start actually integrating that Gradio experience, because of course a CLI is great. We already said we're DevSpeed, we love CLIs, but of course a user doesn't really want that. Now, obviously, a user doesn't really want Gradio either, but this gives you an idea of where we're heading in that direction to make a much more user-friendly experience. So once again, I'm asking these questions. Tell me about my usage. Tell me about how much CO2 I've saved. Any other questions? I can do account management from here as well. I can ask about products, although that sort of comes to products in a bit actually. I'm just trying to know other questions. Then I ask what tariff am I on. So there I get my tariff information. That's from my account. And then I asked another question, which was this one was the when does agreement, when does it come to an end? Now that is on my account, but it's come back with what else you want to ask about. So it wasn't able to extract that information, which was available on my account. And of course, it has access to all this chat history as well, and all this information. So this is another example of, as we test the AI, we need to make sure we test the AI, make sure it gives responses that are correct, and then maybe fine-tune the queries and fine-tune how it in the prompt as well. So that's a bit of a demo of where we are, of where currently I'm up to. As I say, it's very much a POC, but where can we take it next? So starting at the top, going clockwise round, I think obviously the first thing is regarding the AI. So first thing, if you've just seen, strengthening the AI. There's those little edge cases, where it's not really quite working as it should be. So how can we fine tune that, make sure it gives the responses users want? Because if users want to get the information, they want to get the information back, and they'll be a bit confused. I'm certainly, for example, if I got a system telling me I live in the East Midlands when I live in South London, I'd be a bit worried. Other thing is to integrate into the AI that you just saw. I don't actually integrate yet the bill management and products. So when I say products, it's things like, hey, supplier, what other products do you offer? Or, I can't say, please interpret this bill, here's a file. On this side, this is getting quite technical now, and any insights from Python people, I'll be very interested, because I'm a .NET person rather than Python, is to actually properly get proper package management of a lot of these underlying classes of files. So for example, currently, I don't really have the access to the edit, the consumption, the products, the count, the bill. None of that really yet is reusable in another system. And I'd really quite like to rebuild. And also the CLI itself, as you saw, added to Python main.py, it'd be nice if I could have like copilot.exe or something like that, or instead, maybe it's a PyPy package you can then download and run. Linked into this is, obviously, as I said earlier, my parents wouldn't want to download a CLI, nor my friends. They want a website. So maybe we can have a web application we can integrate the AI into. So we can, on the website, whether it be Django or Flask, and that sort of thing, we can have a website rather than CLI. And then finally, almost like bringing integration into itself. And this, I think, one of the key things when I was talking to Tarun about this actually a few weeks ago, is getting all these different things to talk to each other. So, for example, I could upload a bill, and I can say to the system, well, here's a bill from my current supplier. You're a different supplier. What tariff do you have? Looking at my consumption and what I'm currently paying, what tariffs do you have that are better? Is there one that's on 100% renewable? How much carbon can I save by doing this? What products do I offer? So integrating it all together. So there's just a few examples of how I can take this POC to be further. So that brings me pretty much to the end. Just before I finish, just a few acknowledgements here. So this is a list of the technologies I've been using. So obviously it's written in Python. LangChain is for the coordination of the AI. OpenAI currently just for the back end. Click, obviously for the CLI aspect. JSON Pickle for serialization. Pint I'm using for some really good sort of units of measure sort of conversions as well in the system. PyPDF2 for reading the bill files. Radio for those cool but basic but really powerful user interfaces I'm using. Now I have put semantic kernel in here. There's no semantic kernel in here yet. I did originally try using it, but I fell into a lot of trouble with it actually. But I've left it in here because certainly afterwards I'm very happy to talk about some really good experience I've had on the .NET side of semantic kernel with some smart lighting. as well. So I want to try and aspire to do more with semantic kernel potentially in this solution. I've run some people and organizations, obviously the documentation from Microsoft, LangChain, OpenAI, the Python community, all be really useful. I can't thank everybody here, but many of our colleagues, have been really helpful in sort of give some hints on this. Marcel, Matteo, Tarun, for allowing me the opportunity to speak at this session, so thank you guys. And then definitely my non-technical presentation reviewers. My parents, bless them, are not technical, but they sat through this very, very boring presentation to them and thought it was very good. And I hope you have also enjoyed this session. Thank you very much. Any